What's your I never thought it would happen to me story? Story 1. My son was born 3 months early, lived for 3 days and died 8 months later. My husband died in a work accident. I was 28. That happened to others, then to me. I'm 44 now, and when I look at those times, I can't believe how my life has changed because of them. I'm a kinder, gentler, more forgiving person, and I look for how to ensure that a person walks away from an encounter with me looking forward to the next. I miss my son and husband, but they prepared me for my family now. I'm grateful. Story 2. I was eating these icebreaker liquid ice mints and looking at the container. It said, "Warning, avoid eye contact." Looking at the little mint, I thought to myself, how can this little ball get into my eye? Gave it a little squeeze, boom, it happened, squirted right into my eye, and holy the pain. It felt like my eye was an actual mint for about an hour despite me trying to rinse it out. Do not recommend these little. Story 3. I got pregnant 4 times in one calendar year 2016. Pregnant in January, early miscarriage in February, pregnant in March, missed miscarriage in April, pregnant in August, ectopic diagnosed that same month. Pregnant in December, welcomed most awesome baby boy ever on August 31st, 2017. No one talks about miscarriages losses until it happens to them. I didn't think I would lose 1 pregnancy, let alone 3 in 1 freaking year, but it happens. Story 4. Getting a Dear John while on active duty. Saw it happen to other guys. Thought my fiancé would never do that, and sure enough it did. Pro tip: distractions cost lives while overseas. Wait till he's back to give him the news. Story 5. Girl I've been friends with for 11 years, who I've had this on-off crush on, and I are now dating. It's everything I hoped for, and I still can't believe it's happening. Story 6. Waking up blind in one eye on May 1st, 1992, after 5 hospitalizations in 1 year that left me temporarily completely blind, unable to walk, talk or hold objects, and a new MS diagnosis, all of which I thought would never happen to me. I went on to take Taekwondo for 7 years and work in radio. I speak for a living. That speech therapy came in handy. Nothing surprises me anymore. Anything can happen to us at any moment for any reason. Enjoy life anyway. Story 7. Depression, anxiety. My therapist telling me I've probably had it since middle school was really a shock. I just thought feeling the way I did was normal, although being on Reddit it does seem to be more normal than I thought. Story 8. Motorcycle accident. You never think it'll be you ragdolling 40 feet across the road while your bike almost cartwheels into traffic. It's pretty traumatizing. Story 9. Being homeless. My landlord decided he wanted us out of our apartment to put it on Airbnb. Around the same time my parents got their home repossessed. At first I stayed with a friend, but she told me to leave eventually. I had to stay in a hostel, sleeping in a room full of strange men. I was a 20-year-old woman. Story 10. I was exposed to rabies in a developing country, had to cut my trip short, fly home to get the emergency vaccine, didn't get it in time, was convinced I was going to die, partly because of the reaction from public health and the doc's nurses. Literally prior to my trip I had just watched that documentary on the lone girl to ever survive rabies. It was the only vaccine I skipped getting beforehand. During the 10-day waiting period, it felt completely surreal. Dog ended up not having rabies. Long story short, get the rabies vaccine if you're going to a developing country. Edited to add, my ex was also exposed and we were staying together during the waiting period, and she developed a bad cold, and I was simultaneously heartbroken, devastated that she could be starting to have rabies symptoms, and thinking that I would have the same fate in no time. Fun times. Story 11. One day I was taking a shower while I had the radio blasting in my room. I finished showering and went to grab my towel, but the glass shower door was stuck. Mind you, this was a huge shower with maybe 8 foot by 4 foot doors. I screamed for my parents to come to my room, but because my music was so loud they couldn't hear me. I am really claustrophobic, so I started to panic. I pulled on the door one more time, not even very hard, and it shattered into a million pieces. I can still see the glass breaking in slow motion. It took me a second to realize what happened, but I screamed murder when I saw the pool of blood and glass around my feet. My parents ran upstairs faster than Usain Bolt and rushed me to the emergency room. 2 of my toes were hanging by a thread and I had deep cuts from head to toe. They were able to sew my toes back on, but I still have lots of scars. Story 12. I was kidnapped and raped at gunpoint. I used to walk by myself all the time at night. The guy grabbed me right in front of my house. Never caught the guy either. I never thought I would be a victim. Story 13. Experimented with every drug under the sun in high school. Was convinced we'd all been lied to and drugs were a fantastic way to expand horizons and improve life. Caught a nasty heroin addiction at 19. Within a year was spending Christmas in rehab. Drugs are bad. MMK. Story 14. High school me didn't drink a sip, never smoked, nothing, was pretty clean and spent most of my time messing around on the computer and doing band stuff. Freshman year of college I began to drink often with friends and at parties, simple stuff, and I kept my grades intact. Fast forward to today, and I came out of my fall term an abysmal failing semester because I decided getting high all day every day including for exams was a good use of my time. Hoo boy. Story 15. Being raped, worst experience of my whole life. It still haunts me and I still sometimes have nightmares about it. I have woken up in a sweat before. I should probably seek therapy, but speaking out loud about my rape is really hard for me. Edit. I'm not keeping my rape completely locked inside. I've cried a lot. I work out to work off my stress. I got a rape kit done that night. I vent to my closest friends. I don't pretend it never happened. The nightmares aren't every night. I just think the rape and the effects of the rape are something that'll always be with me. Story 16. I'm 35 and I found my 30-year-old sister dead in her apartment back in October. Not the way I thought it would happen. She had MD. Edit for those of you messaging me saying I thought she was a doctor because I posted she had MD. I posted this randomly thinking no one will give a, so I didn't post she had muscular dystrophy, my bad. Happy holidays. Story 17. Sudden deafness. I hadn't even heard of it until today. Good news is that I got to the doctor in time for treatment, so hopefully I get my full hearing back. Just crazy that my hearing got reduced by around 50 during a short nap. Story 18. I never thought I'd get depression or have suicidal thoughts. On a more positive side, receiving free review copies of games from Nintendo before release. Story 19. My dad died when I was 20. I was finally getting to a healthy place, emotionally 11 years later, then my mom died earlier this year. Story 20 was slipped the date rape drug in my drink by a coworker. Fast forward a bit, it's 4 in the morning and I'm running through an unknown building in Detroit, get outside and find my car, then hide in the back seat until help came. I couldn't see much or walk straight because of whatever I was given, not the best time you can have in Detroit. Story 21. False rape accusation. My dudes, if the girl you've known for a month has a sob story about every single guy she's ever slept with and claims to have been raped multiple times before don't have with her, turn around and run away as fast as you can. I was kicked out of a Buffalo Wild Wings for having my service dog with me, on my birthday. She wasn't acting up at all, perfectly behaved as a service dog should be. Me and my mother walked in and the manager came out of her office telling us no dogs allowed. It's Kentucky law and we nicely correct her and explain the ADA laws and stuff. Eventually my mother sees that this manager isn't having it so we leave. I always saw on the news where companies got sued for that, but I figured everyone knew better at this point. Story 22. I didn't think my parents would get divorced. Still hurts to think about the times we thought we'd be a family forever. Also, when I was little I used to think cancer was something that happened to other people and their families. My thinking really changed when my uncle got cancer. Story 23. Being a burn survivor. My ex-well guy I was seeing at the time was a burn survivor at a young age, but his burns weren't that visible. I gave him a shot because I thought he was cute and his burns were furthest from my mind. Anyway, we've had our ups downs other issues so we broke up, again, months after, I got badly burned, I barely survived. Was in a coma and everything, but when I woke up he was there for me, he knew what I've done for him and the way I accepted him for who he is, both inside out, so we had no qualms doing the same for me. He was still attracted to me everything but we just couldn't work. It's a shame because he's a good guy but he has serious issues and especially now, I'm too sick to help me. But I'm okay, still sick after some years since the fire but I'm happy being single for now, and I wish him the best. Anyway, the moral of the story is to look beyond the physical, and as long as you're happy, there's real love and both parties want to make things work, then you're good to go. Story 24. ED. For 20 years I've been a rock star in bed. Just under a year ago something happened. A small thought in my head that said what if it doesn't work this time? That did it. It snowballed and now is stuck on a loop in my head. Ever since then it's been off and on but primarily off. I'm almost terrified of attempting to have. My marriage is a train wreck from this. It affects me almost constantly every day as I'm constantly thinking about it. What's worse is it is like the core of my manhood and it's gone. I've had all the tests, not low T, no other issues. It has to be in my head and I can't shake it. Suicidal thoughts have crossed my mind but I have kids and obligations and that's not going to happen. This sucks. Edit to answer some of the comments and questions. Have tried both Viagra and Cialis. They work sometimes, but not always. This is what scares me. If it isn't guaranteed even with a pill I go in with the same fear. We'll try the meditation and therapy again route. Thanks for the encouraging comments. Having kids before marriage, shortly followed by miscarriage. I didn't want kids but I was devastated that my first pregnancy ended like that. Story 25. I never thought I would be diagnosed with PTSD. Growing up, I was told PTSD was something soldiers get. Pro tip: PTSD can come from any trauma, including assault. I have been diagnosed with depression and anxiety since I was 12 but I couldn't tell my therapists what was really happening. Would have been taken from the home. Being diagnosed with PTSD in college was mind-blowing. I was pissed. I thought my psych was crazy and I couldn't have PTSD. Since then I've come a good ways. Even with further trauma being tacked on, I have accidentally punched people sleeping next to me in the face while asleep several times and warned people of my triggers. At least I'm aware of them now so I can avoid them. I never thought that those jokes about creepy uncles would become a reality, either, until it happened. Living with the PTSD from that is no joke. Story 26. I never thought I would be homeless for a while and owe thousands of dollars to a school. I also thought I would have my life a little sorted out at 22 but in barely one semester done in college. I wish I was dead honestly. It'd be easier. Edit. Thanks everyone for the replies. This happened earlier in the year so I have a place to live now. I still owe money and I struggle with it every day. Lost 2 jobs already but I guess I'll keep trying. I also used to go to a free psychologist before and she eventually realized I have issues so sent me to a psychiatrist and got diagnosed with major depression disorder. I was on meds for a while but I can't afford them nor therapy anymore so I'm just trying to stay alive day by day despite having suicidal thoughts on a daily basis. It's very hard but I'll wait and see what happens later. TLDR, not homeless anymore. Still have debt. Doing okay. Story 27. I never thought I would personally be affected by a mass shooting. My dad worked security at the Mandalay Bay Resort in Las Vegas and was working that night in October. I got a frantic call from my mom around midnight saying there was a shooting at his work and that she couldn't get a hold of him. He never carried his cell phone, but I really didn't think too much of it until I turned on the news. I, like so many people, was glued to the news, and it just kept getting worse. I have to say, not knowing what is happening to your loved one is the absolute worst feeling. We didn't hear from him for 14 anxiety-filled hours until he came home. Unlike so many other people that night, he was thankfully okay, but I would have never guessed that it would hit so close to home. Story 28. Last year doctors found a 12 centimeters tumor in my chest right up against my pulmonary artery. They initially thought I had lymphoma, but it turned out to be a benign teratoma. They still had to saw through my whole sternum to get to it though. Now I have wires in my chest permanently. I've always been a hypochondriac, but never thought I would actually end up having something seriously wrong. Story 29. Given what a head I was in high school, I never thought I would have a wife of 10 years, neither of us ever having been divorced, 2 children with her, a career, and own my own home. I was pretty sure at 15 that I would be a serial divorcee with several children through several women, and live in my mom's trailer my whole life like the rest of my family. I made it. Story 30. It happened to me by proxy. Found out a friend got nailed with 27,000 pics and over 1,000 vids of child pornography. I'm crushed, gobsmacked, and still taken aback. Story 31. Sorry for the long post. I lost my job at 54. Most of my working career was in corporate finance in the northeastern USA. I left a job after 25 years over a pay dispute and worked in the same field at another company doing similar duties. After 4 years I was laid off when our contract wasn't renewed. I found another job 90 miles away after 10 weeks. After being there 10 months, my wife of 19 years was diagnosed with an aggressive terminal brain cancer. Initially I missed a lot of work and used my paid time off quickly. The Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993 FMLA allowed me to take unpaid time off for 12 weeks to take care of my wife. When that was used up, several people from work unknown to me donated some of their unused paid time off without going into the details. I was let go soon after returning to my job. I suppose I can't blame them, but I had my priorities, and they were not work-related. My wife beat the odds and was a survivor for 36 months. Her prognosis was 12 to 18 months. After she passed I knew it would be difficult to get another job in my field at 56, especially with a 3-year gap in my resume. Because of some good financial planning along the way, including short and long-term disability insurance, IRAs, pensions, life insurance and health insurance, I was able to afford to retire at 56. Still, losing my job was a blow to my self-esteem. That and caring for my wife as her sole caregiver for 3 years, then losing her left me devastated. It's been a tough row to hoe, but a man does what a man has to do now. 3 years later things are much better. I can do what I want, when I want, where I want, and more importantly, if I want. Story 32. Get royally over by my fiancé of 7 years. Completely blindsided me. False accusations of domestic abuse. I'm a female. He took all the money. The house was only in his name, which I found out later was an evil plot. I was naive, took all our everything. We also have a child together. This was all less than a week after confiding in my mom that he knew I was having a hard time and that he could never leave me because of it. A bad drug trip. I never really did drugs growing up. Eve barely been one to black out drink. But when I was 26, a bad friend and a shitty bowl of synthetic marijuana almost killed me one night in July. I have a scar to remind me to stick to what I know and be mindful of what I don't. Story 33. I lost out on a relationship with a girl because she met a guy who drove a better car. The thing that sucked the most is that I never thought she was that kind of girl who would be so shallow. Story 34. Never finding a passion in a career. Honestly, if someone told me they would fully fund my college towards any job I wanted, I wouldn't be able to pick anything because I have no idea what I'd like to do. Story 35. I never thought I would quit smoking and drinking on the same day, but I was even more surprised to quit those things because I was diagnosed with MS on that day as well. Story 36. This isn't a throwaway, but F it. I've always been pro-choice but thought that if given the choice I would keep it no matter what. I found out I was pregnant 3 days after I broke up with my abusive, after finding out he had been cheating on me with a ridiculous number of women. Like an idiot I moved right back in with him. At first he acted like he would take it seriously that I wanted to keep it, and then his abusiveness became worse. I was basically given the ultimatum that if I didn't get rid of it he would kill both of us, and he was crazy enough to do it. All of our friends chose his side for some reason and my family disowned me for getting in that position in the first place. I had no options. I'm still pro-choice, and I don't regret not putting a child through the life of having him as a father, but I still mourn daily for the child that could have been. It's been 5 years and I'm still not over it. Story 37. My ex-husband kidnapped my daughter and kept her in his home country for almost 5 years. The US government was worthless, but the foreign government eventually sided with me after I made enough bribes. Got her back earlier this year. Story 38. Almost being murdered. In 2015, I was taking my fiancée to the hospital. We thought she had appendicitis. It was a little past midnight 2 streets past where we lived. The short version is that we were shot at by gangbangers as part of what I assume was this guy's initiation, and we got T-boned by an SUV that was going 55 after I ran the red light to try and escape. We span out and ended up totaled on the side of the road. We were taken to the hospital by EMS. Turns out she didn't have appendicitis. If anyone wants more details, just ask. Story 39. Nothing too special, but this happened to me yesterday. I'm halfway through my first year in college and I submitted a group project yesterday before the winter break started. Not only did the teacher love the project and ask for her own copy, but she also said it was something she'd show her class next year. Never in my life did I think I'd be one of those people whose project was shown for the new batch of students. Story 40. Addiction. I was a pretty good kid growing up who came from a really great supportive family. When I was about 13 years old, I abused a friend's ADHD medication, which must have triggered something in my brain because about 5 years later I was smoking crack cocaine for the first time. Looking back on everything, it was unreal how quickly my drug addiction progressed and how completely it consumed me. When I was about 17 years old, I felt the walls closing in on me, and I worked up the nerve to talk to my dad about what was going on. Obviously, he was heartbroken, but him and my mom helped me get into a treatment program that was catered to young people. The general philosophy at this place was that it's possible to control our drug addictions, and that if I took care of my issues with the harder substances, I could realistically return to alcohol or even weed at some point in my life. I followed that advice with pretty disastrous consequences, and I've recently learned that the founder of that program had an unfortunate surgery, got re-addicted to painkillers, and died a couple years ago. After getting out of my first stint in rehab, I started drinking and using lightly again while I finished high school. However, by the age of 18, I had been introduced to heroin. One of the common misconceptions about drug addicts and particularly heroin addicts I think is that we destroy our external lives immediately. While that's certainly the case for a lot of people, I managed to be a relatively high-functioning heroin addict and even got into a state college in Colorado. I fully immersed myself in the party life and built up a reputation for being a hard drinker drug user. However, despite that, I ended up getting mostly A's and B's my first year in college. By my sophomore year in college, my using had intensified drastically and I was drinking and using 6 days a week and only stopping when I couldn't physically go on. I paid for my habit by stealing books from college bookstores and reselling them to second-hand places. My grades dipped somewhat, but I still managed to keep a respectable GPA. But on the inside, I could feel myself dying more and more with each use. The scariest part of it, at first, was that despite the unimaginable anguish that I experienced, I felt cold and dead inside at the same time. It's hard to explain, but anyone who has been there probably knows. Anyway, I joined a study abroad program and took out a pretty large student loan with no intention of coming back to the States anytime soon. What was supposed to be a 3-month program turned into about 14 months in South America. I got hooked on cocaine again, dropped out of college, and moved into a small apartment with 7 other people. I eventually left the apartment and more or less rambled through South America for months. I slept on the streets or in abandoned buildings, hitchhiked, etc. It was the lowest I had ever been in my life to that point. During my time down there, I ended up getting robbed or beaten up 6 times. I had a knife put to my throat, I was stuffed in the back of a taxi and driven to an ATM at gunpoint, etc. All of those were directly or indirectly related to my drug and alcohol use. One more time, my loving parents bailed me out and helped me buy a plane ticket home when I couldn't go on. I got home and ended up getting back into school after a while. However, I kept using even after everything I went through. I became a daily heroin user once more. Long story short, I made a series of awful decisions and lost my housing, was arrested, and ended up in the hospital with a heroin overdose. It wasn't my first overdose, but this time I stopped breathing. Still, I couldn't stop. There's this line in the movie Candy which is the best heroin depiction IMO that goes something like, when you can quit, you don't want to, when you want to quit, you can't. That was my life. I was no longer a human being. One of the most surreal moments in my entire life was when I got in a 5-car pileup on the highway and dug through the carnage and broken glass to find a rig and the baggies in my glove box and stuffed them into my sock before the cops arrived. Many of the people I knew died horrible deaths. Some were arrested. A few killed themselves. And then my life changed. My cousin, who I had confided in earlier that week, talked to my family. They got me back in rehab, and this time I vowed to quit everything and actually work to get better. That was 5 years ago last week. I got sober in the mountains in Colorado and then ended up doing an extended stay program in Washington State. I stayed in a halfway house for about 6 months after that. After everything, I was in treatment or a halfway house for a full year, but since getting sober and changing my life, I've been so blessed. I finished college online and now I'm about halfway through a master's in predictive analytics. I got a job at one of the biggest tech companies in the country and have a wonderful life in Seattle, and I just celebrated the 1-year birthday of the most perfect baby boy I could have ever hoped for. I've managed to repair my relationship with my family through several years of hard work and am happy to be spending the holidays with them this year. I don't deserve any of it, but life is mysterious sometimes. Anyway, I doubt anyone will read this, but man, it's necessary to talk about it sometimes, even if it's just to myself, and if by chance anyone who is struggling with addiction reads this, it's never too late to turn things around and claim your life back. It's never too late to try and make right the things that you've done. If you're struggling or alone or just need someone to talk to about it, feel free to reach out to me. TLDR, addiction is a Story 41. A major US TV network reached out to my manager, looking for people to audition for a new survival reality show. They were looking for a professional gamer to fill out their cast. So I auditioned. They actually picked me, a woman. to represent the gamergeek community. This was already shocking because mainstream media is still under the impression that gamers are mostly men. It's almost 50 to 50 women men in actuality, according to research studies, and no, it's not just counting women who play mobile games. Side note, men play mobile games too. Anyway, fast forward to filming the show. There are 20 contestants, 10 teams of 2, half are survivalists, the other half are people who don't spend much time outside at all: a model, a beauty pageant queen, an etiquette coach, chess player, etc. The survivalists come from different backgrounds too: head of the Air Force SEER training program, Marine sniper, ninja, D-Force vet, naturalist, survival therapist, and more. I, the gamer, get paired up with the oldest survivalist contestant who's a scoutmaster for the Boy Scouts of America, and he's also former Air Force too. We are one of the most unlikely duos, and no one thinks we'll make it all the way. The closer and closer we got to the end, the more shocked we were at ourselves for having made it so far. We were almost eliminated more than any other team on the show, but we came back stronger after every elimination challenge. Spoiler alert, we end up winning the whole show and split $500,000 between the two of us. It was surreal. The creator of the show, Matt Kunitz, even said to us, "Honestly, I can say I never expected you guys to win, and neither did we. It was an amazing experience, living in the jungles of Fiji for a month, learning from the survivalists how to live off the land and fend for ourselves. I never expected to win anything like this, and it changed my life. I'm super grateful for the whole experience and how it's helped me, not only financially, but with my mental health motivation. Working day in day out on a PC, no matter how fun gaming for a living sounds, it has its ups and downs, can take a toll on your mental health. So I'm grateful for the chance to unplug again." Story 42. I had been going through a really hard breakup. My ex and I were rough for a while, and then things started getting really promising. I started putting more into the relationship and I got more back from it, but it was too late. She had already started talking to and seeing another guy. Now, in his defense, he didn't know about me, and he thought he was dating her. She played us both. Heartbroken, I tried cutting off as much communication as I could from her. I'm not sure how, but my friend Zach seemed to see this in me, had always asked and joked to go clubbing with him, until finally I did on October 27th. We knew it was going to be packed because of an inevitable Halloween event, so we brought my last-minute costume I use every year, TV helmets. When we got there, we had to take pictures with a ton of people. Granted, we're dressed normal with our street clothes, but we happened to have TVs on out heads. They loved it. So much, in fact, we decided to join in on the costume contest. A couple rounds go by and we're standing on this massive stage with the DJs. We had to dance, so both of us just did the robot. As cheesy as it was, we had won first place and tickets for 2 to go to England. We still won't be able to believe it when the plane touches down. Story 43. My wife will set the trash bag outside the back door, then tell me, "Hey, the trash needs to be taken out." Okay, cool, but I told her to stop doing that because the squirrels dig through the trash bag and tear it open. Well, one of these did exactly that, grabbed some food, trying to run off with it as I came outside, and left it on the top stair. I walk out the back door and it's been raining recently. I grab the trash bag, take one step off the porch onto the stairs, and instantly slip on a banana peel. Then I did the splits from the porch to the ground, with 6 stairs breaking my fall. On my nuts. Good times. Cartoon bullshit. My best friend brutally murdered his girlfriend, who was also my best friend and the sweetest person I have ever known, and dumped her body in a creek in the woods. He then stole my fiancé's childhood deer rifle, tied his girlfriend's parents up in their house, robbed them, and set their house on fire. They escaped and survived. He used my fiancé's gun in the robbery. We searched for my deceased friend for a month until her body was found on the bank of a creek. We always thought he was a nice guy who could never hurt a fly. He's now in prison for life, and I hope he gets everything he deserves and more. Story 44. I was in a love triangle, and I was the one who had to make the decision. When watching movies and TV shows where a character is left to choose between 2 love interests, I would always roll my eyes and think, seriously, just pick one. It can't be that hard. And then I moved away to college, and away from my boyfriend at the time, K. I met a new guy, T, and we clicked instantly, but since I was in a relationship, we decided to try to just be friends. I had a feeling T liked me too, so I was interested in pursuing that. I refused to be a cheater though, and I still really loved K, so I promised myself that I wouldn't do anything crazy until I was sure who I wanted. I had such strong feelings for both of them, and I agonized for weeks over it. I'm talking pros and cons lists, asking all of my friends what they thought, and then finally realizing that if I was so conflicted about staying with K, then it was time to end it. I am much happier now with T, but actually having to choose one person out of 2 people you desperately don't want to lose was difficult. Story 45. Oh gosh, I have too many of these. Cheated on, got pregnant with someone, caught in a love triangle, friends with benefits, went to jail for someone else's crime. My son was miscarried before being born, went back to college, got blackout drunk, struggled with addiction, beat addiction, turned 20 last month. Story 46. Age 18. I was dead set on having a professional career that would make me wealthy so I could buy all the new clothes and a kick-ass townhouse in the city and take regular trips to Europe. That's what would make me happy. Age 30. I scoop out of chicken coops and rabbit hutches. I clean fish and scrub oysters. My wardrobe is practical and dotted with thrifted items. I live in a 1,000 square foot home in a rural area. I'm really happy I didn't follow that first life plan. Story 47. Up a friendship, getting accepted to Harvard and Yale. I thought they were just factories that spat out rejection letters. Now I work with people that almost exclusively come from Ivy League schools. It really is a whole other world. Story 48. I met a girl who didn't like her that much. We saw each other often. And her boyfriend inevitably found out. She'd then go on to attempt to ruin my life. Prior to this, we'd been seeing each other pretty much every other day, and gradually getting more intimate. We'd do everything but PIV because she considered that cheating. But her sending me nudes and blowing me wasn't. Anyway, she would regularly send me nudes, like the attention over Snapchat. At the time, my phone was set up to automatically save any Snapchat received. I realized this shortly after the first couple were sent, and despite feeling like a creep, she was photogenic and the booty was nice, so I decided to keep them and not mention it. This would be my saving grace. When her caught her, she claimed I raped her. The cops called, I came in. They grilled me for a couple hours. I was only saved when I mentioned how weird I found it that she had kept sending me nudes after the alleged event. The cop perked up, asked if I had a record of that, and I sent the officer the entire collection of auto-saved pics, complete with metadata and the text shed overlaid on top of the image showing shed sent it to me specifically. As far as I know, the case has been settled. I haven't heard anything since sending that email. I'll no longer be alone with the women I've just met, and I no longer feel guilt about saving nudes, and I keep a record of our correspondence. Moral of the story, men, it absolutely can happen to you. This can very easily ruin your life. I was only saved because I was a creep. Well, it's better to be a creep than in jail. I urge you to save the evidence. Don't send them to your buds, share them online or otherwise but absolutely save them. If you make a good effort of keeping them safe and secure, you've got your evidence to keep you safe. And she can rest assured that only the person she sent them to will ever see them. I see nothing wrong in that given the stakes. Edit the irony. No one gave a when I reported a girl assaulted me at a party 10 or so years ago, but they bend over backwards for her false allegation.